We need to address the national debt. And I thought that Trump was doing that when he brought in Musk. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Trump supporter, but I think his spending's gotten a little bit out of control.
So as they prepare to hand trillions of dollars over to the wealthy, jacking up the deficit, jacking up the debt, as Donald Trump already did his first term in office, is that what the MAGA movement actually wants? Now, we know Republican politicians talk about the debt until they get elected and until they're in charge, and then they don't give a damn anymore. But maybe some of the voters actually mean it when they say it. Maybe it's not just a tool to attack the Democrats. And we're finding this out actually thanks to, of all places, Fox News, who's been traveling around, going to diners, as you do, and talking to people about their concerns about the debt. And so there's some common threads in the many interviews they did. Here's a little snippet.
It's too big, and we're leaving it for the future for our children, and we're leaving all that debt on them to pay for. I don't think that's right.
We can't keep spending ourselves, into the ground and leaving that burden for our children and grandchildren. That's ridiculous.
I mean, I'm inheriting it, my kids are inheriting it, and we've got to cut it off or we're going to default.
It is a huge problem. We've got to the point right now, I think we're $36 trillion in debt. And it's like running up a credit card. Sooner or later the bill has to be paid.
So that's in red districts. Not necessarily all of them are Republicans, but these are in red areas, and they're concerned. They're concerned about what we're leaving to our kids. I share that concern as a new father. I'm worried about the debt that will be left to our kids. I'm also worried about how little of the government will be left to our kids. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about. Not all of those that they talked about were concerned, though. One man in Staten Island said, I think it's the national debt, always a problem. I think the other party was just made everything upside down, and now Trump's trying to fix it. So it's gonna take a few years, but I think we're on the right track. And I have a little issue with that. Not necessarily in the it's the other party that did it part, although we could definitely quibble with who made the pandemic as bad as it was. But if you think it was the other party, if it was just Biden being irresponsible, how does adding trillions to the debt under Donald Trump put us on the right direction? That at least, at best, that's continuing on a bad path. This is not fiscal discipline. Why are we jacking up the price of the military by $150 billion? Why tax cuts for the rich when you would think if we're being responsible, then they should be responsible too. We all have to tighten up our belts or whatever in these difficult times, but that's not what they're doing. And so some of the people, obviously, the Fox News propaganda, Trump's propaganda is gonna work on them, but there are concerns out there. And so, Michael, when we talk about fears that this bill will result in a backlash from voters, I generally focus on things like the Medicaid cuts. We were talking about SNAP earlier, but it will also jack up the debt. So maybe that will do some damage to their brand going forward. What do you think of all this?
It will, but the first guy that we saw when they brought sound up, when you opened this segment, he talks about it and talks about it and talks about it. And then at the end, he says, don't get me wrong, I still support Donald Trump. Right. So it's not like these people are kind of swinging across the aisle because of the debt issue. For people for whom the debt is important, people who think about their kids. And by the way, what about the debt that my kid is causing me to go into? Rather than, we never talk about that, by the way.
It's only fair for you to hand over national debt.
If I leave him dead, it just seems like it's getting back at him. But no, in seriousness. So I think what you pointed out was exceptionally true, which is that we excoriate our opponents for what they did to the debt. We run on that, and then what we do, we say we're increasing that. And voters, debt is something that people love to talk about. In my experience in politics and covering it, to me, it's something that people love talking about, but it's not the one thing that gets them to vote when it's time to vote. If you think about your kids, or you think about other things, you're thinking about today, not tomorrow. It's what Al Gore always said is the problem with climate as an issue, is that it doesn't feel, although it's feeling like it to so many of us now, it for the longest time, it felt like something that was eventual, and eventual doesn't sell in politics. And what sells right now is the most important thing in retail politics, which is a frustrating thing, but it's a reality.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just another thing out there. It's not necessarily going to result in somebody switching over or whatever. But I like that at least some people do seem to care. The fact that you had the one guy who actually cited something like the actual stat on the national debt is good. I think there's a lot of reason to fear the average American's level of knowledge of what's really going on. So good to see that some people are tapped into this, even though I agree with you that I don't think it's going to drive their politics necessarily.